So The Incredible Adventures of Van Helsing 3 is the final one in the trilogy, which kind of makes sense given the name. So if you haven't played the first two or any of them, it's an action role-playing game where you play Van Helsing in a steampunk gothic-y sort of Lovecraftian world. The first two sort of carried on your progression, where the first big thing to probably notice about Van Helsing 3 is that you don't. You pretty much start from scratch, level 0, 1, whatever it is, 1. And the cap is 30, where the second game the cap was 60. So this is probably going to annoy a lot of fans of the series. This really does feel like, in a lot of ways, sort of going back to basics and to be more accessible for people who haven't played the previous games, which doesn't exactly fit that well, given that the story is quite prominent and it doesn't really sort of introduce anyone to the world if they haven't played a previous Van Helsing game. You're thrown right in where the second one ended, and you've got to continue the story. But for those that have played it and those who haven't, that are happy enough with just the basics, the story in Van Helsing 3 is actually pretty good. The writing is great. The voice acting isn't the best, but the sort of the dialogue and the banter between both Van Helsing and your sidekick Katarina is pretty good. So the story is actually mostly based around her and her backstory, because she's been with you the last two games as well, and you didn't really know much about her. So this kind of gives sort of like closes that story, as well as closing the story of the Van Helsing trilogy. Which, I mean, this story like isn't usually something you think of when you play an action role-playing game, and this one it's not overbearing, and it doesn't take you away from the action that much, thankfully, because honestly the action is incredible. It's quite standard for the genre in some ways, but at the same time they have they've enough little intricacies and tweaks to make it feel quite different. And even from the visual standpoint, impacts feel, well, impactful. When you hit an enemy, it almost feels like the screen shakes a little bit, and when you kill an enemy, they pretty much break apart. It's quite a visual sort of experience to know that your abilities are powerful. And I mean, that's something a lot of games sort of, especially in this genre, sort of fail, is that you hit an enemy over and over again, they just continue with their attack patterns, and you just see their health go down bit by bit, and it's just sort of like trading blows at some stage, and you realise that you have more health than them, and they're not taking as much off you as you are of them, so you can be okay. And then if not, you run away. And Van Helsing 3 actually isn't the easiest of games. I've a number of times died, and a number of times had to run away, especially when you're you're outnumbered incredibly, in some situations, easily 20, 30 to 1. And it is in them moments where you sort of set up your own challenge to get through it without dying, because the penalty isn't too much. I think it's 10% to respawn where you were 10% of your gold you lose, and then you can just restart at a checkpoint or at the start of the area with much less penalties. But in terms of content, the game is around €15, and for that you're getting a lot of content. You're getting a lot of different activities. Not all of them are really that good. You have the base game, you have a tower defense minigame, which is essentially Neocore, the developers' other game, Death Trap. It's based on that, and the tower defense minigame was implemented in Van Helsing 2, and then they enjoyed it. I guess the feedback was so good that they made an entire game out of it. That's a great game. Death Trap is an incredibly fun, addicting game that you just keep going back to and back to. The loot feels great, the combat feels great. It's very similar to this, but it all just kind of feels better structured than what it does in Van Helsing 3, which to me kind of, maybe in some ways they're thinking, it'll make people enjoy it and then they'll go buy Death Trap. But to me it kind of just, I'm lucky I had Death Trap, because I reviewed it, and if I hadn't have played Death Trap, played the minigame in this and realised they made a game on it, I wouldn't think about buying it. I really wouldn't. It's it doesn't feel that great. I don't know what it is. It's in every single way it seems the exact same. It just doesn't feel as enjoyable, as quick as pick up and play, one more map, and I think that's what kind of pushes me away from it, because I've felt it different through Death Trap, and it's much more enjoyable. There's other mini games like the War Table, where you sort of build up armies and people and send them out in missions, and then you've got to wait real world time. Like the most recent one of these was in Dragon Age Inquisition. To be honest with you, I did not like it whatsoever. I just played it once, or went into it once or twice, and I couldn't have been bothered, because to me this game's all about its gameplay, and to me that isn't gameplay, that's playing with menus. And there's also sort of this beast we can send out into areas and they loot and grab stuff for you. Once again, that's another thing where you just press a few buttons and then you have to wait half an hour, and it just doesn't feel that great or enjoyable. But maybe one of the biggest things is that it has been simplified overall. Skill trees, and like you have a skill tree where when you level up you put points into either your current abilities or obtain new ones, upgrade, sort of stuff like that. There's perks where if you get so much reputation it'll give you or Katarina ability points or health percentages and stats, and numbers are all over the place as you'd expect, which is great, but it kind of does feel like a little more accessible than before, and skill trees don't seem that enjoyable anymore. Like, I blindly put points into things that I didn't really think about, where before you'd want to sort of build your character to your liking, and I wasn't getting it with this. I was just sort of like, yep, I want just that maybe a bit more powerful, and maybe that a bit more powerful, and that's it. But overall, like, the trilogy is great, and hopefully, I don't know if there is already, if Neocore release a trilogy bundle for 30 to 40 euro, it's for 30 to 40 euro you're getting dozens and dozens of hours of gameplay. You're getting it, you can see how the confidence in the developers have grown over the years, and what they've implemented and changed, and what worked and what didn't work. And I mean, Van Helsing 3 is overall maybe a little bit disappointing to end the trilogy on, because it felt torn between wanting to get more people in and then catering to their fans that have been there from the beginning. But I've been there from the beginning. I kind of felt that little bit of disappointment, but overall it didn't change my excitement and my enjoyment of the game. So I guess that stands to how enjoyable the game actually is. So if you want to read the full written review, it's over on gamesmack.net, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Get the